Hello, my name is Mary and welcome to my video on herpes. So herpes is caused by two types of viruses, herpes simplex virus 1, HSV1, and herpes simplex virus type 2, or HSV2. Herpes simplex virus type 1, HSV1, often causes oral herpes as shown in the picture here. These can result in typically results in cold sores or fever blisters on or around the mouth. These can be caused by non-sexual contact or sexual contact, just generally some kind of transfer of saliva with an infected person. This actually happens in most people when they're quite young, generally through like a parent giving a small kiss on their child's cheek with the cold sore. However, it can be spread to the genital regions through oral sex. HSV2 is often referred to as genital herpes, and that is typically considered a sexually transmitted disease, as it's pretty much only spread through sexual contact. So what specifically is herpes? So herpes is, these are types of viruses from the Herpes viridae family. This is a type of DNA virus that infects humans and other types of animals. There are 8 primary herpes viruses for which humans are the primary host. They are the herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, the varicella zoster virus, the Epstein-Barr virus, and then several others, including Kaposi sarcoma herpes viruses. The herpes virus genome consists of a non-segmented, linear, double-stranded DNA molecule. These genome lengths typically range from 120 to 250 units and encode for 70 to 200 genes, so smaller than a single human gene. And an image of a HSV1 capsid is shown here. These herpes virons consist of an envelope, a tegument, which is kind of more of an internal structure, and nucleocapsid shown here, and a core. Again, the virons are approximately 120 to 260 nanometers in diameter, since the main thing impacting their size is the length of their genome. It may be spherical to pleomorphic in shape, with numerous evenly dispersed glycoprotein surface projections, so little things sticking out on the surface of this image. And then here we have the taxonomy for herpes. Note that the family is the Herpes viridae, the genus is the simplex virus, and then the species is the herpes simplex virus 1 or 2. So where does it come from? Researchers at the University of California, San Diego School of Medicine have identified the evolutionary origins of herpes, of human herpes simplex virus 1 and 2, reporting that the former infected hominids before their evolutionary split from chimps over 6 million years ago, while the latter, HSV2, jumped from ancient chimps to the ancestors of modern humans, a Homo erectus, approximately 1.6 million years ago. So herpes has existed longer than humans, Homo sapiens have. HSV2 is far more genetically similar to the herpes virus found in chimps, which is how they went and tracked the divergence. So how do you transmit herpes? So herpes is most generally identified by the sores, which are shown in the image here. These sores can occur during childhood or young adulthood from non-sexual contact with saliva, especially from HSV1. This is really spread both in HSV1 and 2 through contact with a herpes sore, saliva from a partner with an oral herpes infection, genital fluids from a partner with the genital herpes infection, skin contact in the oral area, or for oral herpes, or in the genital area for genital herpes. It's also really important to note that you will not get herpes from toilet seats, bedding, or swimming pools. You will also not get it from touching objects such as silverware, soap, or towels. So if you have like there's no reason to be scared going to a public pool. It is important to note, especially for genital herpes, that the only way to completely avoid STDs of any kind is to avoid all vaginal, anal, or oral sex. If you are sexually active, condoms, when properly used, can help prevent that contact and thus prevent an STD. But it's important to note that they don't cover the entirety of the involved area. So what are the symptoms? So again, we've mentioned these blisters. Most people with genital herpes have no symptoms or have very mild symptoms. In fact, mild symptoms may go unnoticed or even be mistaken for other skin conditions like pimples, acne, or ingrown hairs. Thus, I think the vast majority of cases actually are unidentified. Herpes sores generally appear as one or more blisters on and or around the genitals, rectum, or mouth. This is known as having an outbreak. The blisters break and leave painful sores that may take a week or more to heal. So the image of this progression is shown on the left. Flu-like symptoms such as fever, body aches, or swollen lymph nodes may also appear during this first outbreak, right after the initial infection. People who experience this initial outbreak can have repeated outbreaks, especially if they have HSV-2. However, repeat outbreaks are usually shorter and less severe than the first. In addition, both HSV-1 and 2 are lifelong conditions. So this initial infection, especially for HSV-1, you generally don't know that you have it, and then it can just pop up again years and years later, or just whenever you're stressed. So there's no cure for genital or oral herpes. However, there are various types of treatments, especially with prescription antiviral medications. These antiviral medications may help sores heal faster or sooner during that initial outbreak, lessen the severity and duration of symptoms in recurrent outbreaks, reduce the frequency of recurrence, so you just have it happen less and less. It can minimize the chance of transmitting the herpes virus to another. This is especially important for people who are sexually active and wanting to prevent that spread to their partners. Some of these antivirals are acyclovir, which is also called Zorvirax, and valacyclovir, also called Valtrex. So these come in tablet forms. There's also various types of creams that can be used as antiviral treatments. Your doctor may recommend that you take this medication only when you have symptoms of an outbreak, such as every day for the duration of the outbreak, or for instance taking like 3 pills at the very beginning. Or they might recommend that you take this medication daily, even without signs of an outbreak. These medications are generally well tolerated with very few side effects. So how do you know if you have herpes? Well, again, the main method is by physical examination, so testing to see if you have the sores. Your doctor can also go and perform primarily 3 tests. A viral culture, which involves taking a tissue sample or scraping of the sores for examination in the laboratory. A polymerase chain reaction, or PCR test, which is used to copy your DNA from a sample of your blood, tissue from a sore, or spinal fluid. The DNA can then be tested to establish the presence of HSV and determine which type you have. Or a blood test. This test analyzes a sample of your blood for the presence of the HSV antibodies to detect a past herpes infection. So you can go and look for the viruses themselves, like the genetics, like the genome of the virus, or the antibodies, your body's response to them. However, the CDC does not actually recommend testing for herpes in people without symptoms. This is because diagnosing, especially genital herpes, in somebody without symptoms is not shown to lead to any change in their sexual behavior, nor has it stopped the virus from spreading. In addition, there's many false positive results where a test says that you have herpes when you don't. Even if you don't have symptoms, you should talk with your doctor to find out if you should be tested, because it can be useful in a great many situations. Some of these important situations to consider are if you have these symptoms that maybe are ambiguous that might be related to herpes, if you have or have had a partner who has previously had genital herpes, or if you have multiple sex partners. Please note that while the herpes blood test can determine if you have a herpes infection, it will not be able to tell who gave you that infection. In addition, syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia are considered notifiable diseases in the United States, but herpes is not, primarily because of the reasons listed earlier. So a disease is notifiable if healthcare providers in all 50 states are required by law to report the diagnosis to their state or local health departments. So right now it's just recommended, and because it's just recommended, the CDC is not able to provide state-by-state data because not everybody does it. In addition, the Council of State and Territorial Epidemiologists works with the CDC to determine if a particular disease should be nationally notifiable. To make this decision, they follow a number of guidelines, such as whether or not it's treatable, whether or not it's preventable, how common it is, whether or not a public health response is needed, like if it's not really causing any problems, why bother, and whether or not there's a good source of information on the number of cases, and whether or not it represents a significant public health threat. So since herpes really is not too treatable, and while it is preventable, it doesn't actually have very many changes in behavior for fear of it. It's incredibly common, but there's not really a very large public health response possible. There's not consistent information on cases, and it's not a very large public threat. They haven't deemed it necessary that every healthcare provider reports their positive cases. So we'll wrap up this discussion with a discussion on some of the complications that can result. So the main cases where herpes can be quite problematic are if you're pregnant or about to give birth. Some research suggests that genital herpes infection may lead to miscarriage or make it more likely to deliver the baby too early. You can also pass herpes to your unborn child before birth, but it's more commonly passed during delivery. This can lead to deadly infection in your baby, called neonatal herpes. This can be avoided with a C-section, and quite often the mother will go and have some of these antiviral treatments described earlier to help reduce the viral shedding. But because the baby's immune system isn't fully developed yet, it can be quite serious. Even if a case was to be given to a child after birth, but before that immune system has been developed. In addition, herpes infection can cause these sores and outbreaks that allow HIV to enter the body. Even without visible sores, herpes increases the number of immune cells in that area, and HIV targets immune cells for entry into the body. So having both HIV and genital herpes increases the chance of spreading HIV to an HIV-negative partner during any form of sex. So here's my works cited. Thank you all very much.